Hey, hey. Hopefully as usual, I hope and pray that the audio levels are are decent. Because it's really hard to set all this stuff up, but I think I got it right here. Let's see if I can turn it up a little bit. All right. Cool. No, my attention span. Why? Because I was like 5 minutes late. Sorry. Okay, so I think we can just get into it. So the first thing I'm going to do that I learned from last time is that I got to turn off the, if we're coloring a black and white page, I got to turn off the halftone patterns on top, because it just leads to like that weird effect that like, what is it called? The moire effect. It just like doesn't look good when it's like compressed and sent through like YouTube compression. So I think we're going to work on this page here. Let me make this cleaner. There you go. So I think we're going to work on this page, but I have to turn off all the halftones, because the last time I did this, when I watched the stream back, I realized like how bad it looked. It's that thing of like if you're trying to read manga on an iPad or something and you zoom out, it like gets that really weird, like extra pattern that looks really bad. So I'm going to turn all that stuff off just for the purposes of the stream, because you don't need to actually have the halftone to see the like color values that I'm playing with. Oh. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So this page is now looks better on stream. But what we're going to do is finish off this page today, and we're going to do some more of what we were doing here, where the color is starting to like bleed into the black and white world. Oh, nice. Sound levels are thumbs up. Sweet. Yeah, we hit 200,000, which is crazy. It kind of slowed down significantly. Like there were a couple months, I think like September and October and November, where we were getting like, 40,000 subs a month. But it really slowed down. Like I know that December is slower for like algorithms don't push stuff as much, I've heard, in December. I know January is supposed to be slower. So it's kind of like cooled off. But yeah, we like rocketed through the 200,000. It's crazy. Yeah, like I felt bad because I was trying to do like a whole halftone thing last time where I was like showing techniques for like texture, and it just doesn't work. Like the stream compression instantly like moire affects the dots into like a weird like optical illusion that like hurts your eyes. So we do what we can. I just don't think I can stream like heavy halftone stuff. But the good news is the way I work, I don't use halftone brushes to shade my stuff exclusively. Like a lot of people will just grab like brushes that give you the dot pattern, but I do the whole thing with smooth brushes and then convert it to a halftone, and I save those smooth gray layers, which is nice, which means that when I stream I can convert it back so that it looks better on stream. And if we release a digital version of this, we could release a non-halftone version. Like there could be two digital versions, like one that preserves the texture and one that doesn't moire when you zoom out, which will actually be really cool. Something that really bothers. I was reading the original Evangelion manga, and it's just like so difficult to read on the screen sometimes. All right, let's see. So I got my grayscale palette, and I think, let me find it. So we have to use the right red. So this so here he is. So have I actually, I think so. I think I have not actually saved the palettes that I used to color the chili pepper. So let's do that now. Because we've got our, what I call the dream palette. That's like the majority of the colors. And then I need to make like a chili man palette. So let's do that now. So I'm using Photoshop, but you don't have to use Photoshop to do this. Any digital program will give you, the ability to create like palettes and swatches and stuff. So chili man red. Yeah, I guess that's sort of his base green, right? This is like his base green, and then the other greens are either shadows or highlights. So chili green. There's the shadow green. So yeah, I'm just gonna like, this is the first time I ever fully colored him was on this page. So I'm just gonna sample everything that I did and make it kind of like the rules, you know, the rules that I'm gonna use from now on. Chili shadow. And then it looks like it looks like for highlights I used a yellow that I set to like semi-transparent or something. But just to make my life easier, I'm gonna call this a new color. Because it probably is this yellow that I used to shade the highlights or to make highlights on the green. It probably is just like one of these yellows that I have saved, like set to overlay or something. But to make my life easier, I'm just going to start calling this a new color. So we're going to call this chili highlights. Is there anything else? I guess he's kind of got this like orangey, sort of the same thing. You can tell I used a yellow set to overlay on his foot. So I'll just pretend that's a new color too. So we'll call this chili red highlight. And then it looks like I also used probably a blue set to multiply to do the shadows. But again, it sort of made a new color. So we'll do chili red shadow. Is there anything else I need to sample off of this? I guess that's it. Oh, maybe the color of his eyes. I'm probably going to need that again. So we're going to call this chili eyes. And then maybe we need the colors off this bottle. I think this skull really should be the same tone as his eyes. I'll save it. It's a little different than what I just sampled, so I have to decide what I actually want to use. So yeah, this is just, this is what I do usually, is I color something in. I sometimes pick a palette before I start, but sometimes I just color to see what goes together, and then I sample all the things that I did and assemble them over here off to the side, and then save it. Yeah, so it looks like the label's its own color too. So we'll call this bottle label. So you can see the palette starting to come together over here on the left. Oh, I guess I used his hands are white. He's got these, well, I guess you could say sort of like classic cartoon. I don't think you're allowed to say Steamboat Willie, right? Steamboat Willie's in the public domain, but you can't say the name of the rodent character that Steamboat Willie is also known as. But that's the kind of gloves that our Chili Man has. Classic cartoon character gloves. And it looks like I used a slight gray to shade that, so I'm adding that to the swatches, and I'm calling it glove shading. Okay, I think that's it. The bottle is the same color as his body, I think. So I think that's it. So there you go. So there's our Chili Man palette. So I'm going to group all these together and call it Chili Man. And we'll move it up. So that's the stuff that I want to kind of have breaking into this world. Nope. This world. So this is the moment when she kind of like looks over and the chili hot sauce bottle is starting to turn red. This is very much like The Giver, for those who remember that book. Or like Pleasantville or something. All right, so let's just do that. Let's start by just coloring it red. See how it feels. So we'll grab Chili Man Red. Rubber hose animation. Yeah, is that what it's called? Like Cuphead? That's like a good descriptor for what it is. Like the Cuphead style. rubber hose animation where like everybody's arms are like wiggly and they do like weird, they'll like do a weird dance and all the furniture will have wiggly legs too. I feel like that's a very like 1920s cartoon style. Is that called rubber hose animation? All right. Hello, Comic Man. Hello, Bridget. Welcome. Oh, man. There's almost 30 people watching. That's scary. 30 people have nothing better to do than watch someone meticulously block out shapes in a comic book. It's been a while since I've streamed. Just been like really busy. But I'm glad to be doing it again. The next month is going to be interesting because I have to really like put my head down and color this thing, because in order to meet our self-imposed deadline of April to ship these comics, like I basically have the month of February to try to finish the coloring. So I'm not sure I'm going to be able to make as much content, to be honest. I'll try to, I mean, streaming is helpful because I can actually like you know, like I'm going to be coloring anyway. So if I stream, it doesn't take away from my time coloring the comic. And then I can cut the stream down into highlights. So I can still sort of make content that way. But stream highlights never really do as well as the more produced videos. I mean, obviously, I understand why. Like, people didn't really sign up to watch like highlights of me streaming, you know? It's not like what our subscribers like sort of recognize. I think honestly sometimes people just see that kind of stuff and they just skip past it because they don't even realize it's our content, because it doesn't look like, stream highlights don't look like our normal content. But it's kind of the only thing I have at my disposal, frankly, because I have so much to do on the coloring here. So I can't really like make really scripted high-end videos every night. Hello. Hello, CMYK FPV. CMYK FPV BBBQ. The extra B stands for BYOBB. It's like, nothing like a 30-year-old Simpsons reference to really excite chat, huh? Hi, Ash. Hello. I hope you're also having a good day. Hello, cool dragon. What's up? All right, so this is like already super interesting. I think the way this is going to work is not necessarily having it be like stark red, but have it sort of fade, have the edges fade back to gray or something to soften it, but we'll block it out. The question is it already red in this first panel when she looks over and sees it? Maybe. Let's try it. Oops. Oh, but is the bottle red though? It's not. How did I color it last time? It's like red, reddish orange with a yellow label. Because the Chili Man character is red, so he's gonna have to pop off the label. Okay, let's do this. Oh, it's yellow. I made the label yellow. Sorry, this is crazy, man. Like, I gotta really like, these details really matter. I think I planned this on purpose. I think I planned that the label would be yellow so that when he appears on the bottle, like as like the artwork for the label, he would pop. His red form would pop. So let's do that. So luckily I added bottle label to my swatches. So let's do that. Again, I'm gonna block this out. It's gonna look a little crazy. Oops. It's gonna look a little crazy, and I'll do a bunch of stuff to kind of like soften it back and make it feel, because it's weird because it has to pop. Like, the whole point is that it's like another universe intruding into hers. but it also can't pop too much or it's not going to look very refined. So I'm just going to try to do some stuff to kind of like make it feel like it's fading in a little bit. Like the edges might fade off, or there might be like some desaturation on the edges or something, some kind of feathering. And Lydia drew it so that the hot sauce is starting to like pour out, which is kind of cool. It's like there's like a moment where it's like really like invading into the universe. It's sort of like Ghostbusters slime or something. So I'll do that. I'll paint that in, and that'll help. Yeah, I've heard that about the. I did a huge deep dive on Steamboat Willie, like what was allowed. And the glove thing apparently is misinformation, because if you actually look at the original poster for Steamboat Willie, like he did not have gloves in the actual cartoon, but the poster that was released to promote the movie in like 1928 or whatever year it was, he is wearing gloves. So apparently, because they did that to the poster, and it was released the same year as the cartoon, apparently the gloves actually might be allowed. Like there's like I've seen a lot of discussion about that on the platform formerly known as Twitter. I don't know. I've heard like really interesting stuff about apparently there's a lot of discussion about the fact that you can actually do more with Steamboat Willie than people realize, but they don't want you to know that because like it gets even closer to the character that they don't want you to use. But I don't know. I need to I feel like if I had time, which I don't, a really good piece of content would be like interviewing a lawyer, like a copyright lawyer, and like actually like doing a bit of journalism to like cut it down into like a little 5-minute like recap of like highlights from an interview with somebody, with an expert, where you like ask them specific questions or like bring along drawings and show them specific drawings with different levels of like similarity and like get their reaction to it. I think that would be pretty cool. I have about 1 million ideas for videos all the time and like not enough time to make them. But that would be like, if I had the time to do more like journalistic style, like interview based content, that would be one of the first things I would do. Is like the definitive copyright lawyer gives you their opinion on Steamboat Willie likeness video, you know? I think that would be pretty cool. I don't know, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but there are also people who believe that like the no gloves thing is part of like a push from a certain company to like put a little bit of misinformation out there. I don't know if I believe it that far, because it does seem like the kind of thing that people would just kind of pick up and run with on their own, but it's interesting. So the question is, what color is the lid? I didn't, the only time I've ever done the bottle, the lid was popping off because it's sort of like this crazy moment. So I have never defined what color the lid is. I think lids to these kinds of bottles are just like black, right? But we don't want to go pure dark black because that will just like blend in with the line art. So let's do like a 65% gray. I don't know. Yeah, we're gonna have to figure something out because that doesn't work. 70? We'll do that for now. A lot of this is going to be trial and error. Lydia did some really funny like anagram stuff here. Like the name of the hot sauce is Tezuka's Capsaicin Nebula hot sauce. But on this panel where like the world is like melting and getting weird, she wrote Succubi Ethanol Panaceus. it's like an anagram of what it actually is called. Like the whole thing is like morphing and twisting. Green. Oh yeah, it could be green. Green top lid. That might look good because there's a lot of green. There's a lot of green in his form. Like he's got green legs. Let me color him in. We'll see. All right, so we'll get him in there. Yeah, reddish brown maybe. I don't know. We'll have to see. I try to make like almost every color choice kind of like symbolic or metaphorical. Like there's a pretty deep meaning behind a lot of the color choices in our books. I'm kind of at a loss though of like what metaphorically a lid symbolizes and what color choice you would you would make based on some deeper meaning of a lid. I don't know if there is one. So I'm just going to do, normally I would do more layers, but because I'm pretty zoomed in, like he's pretty small on the page, I'm just going to do it all as one layer because it can be a little bit rough. The chili guy is on a different layer so that if I go outside of the lines, I can erase him out without touching the yellow label. Like if I go like this, I can like, erase it back without damaging the yellow, but I'm not putting the green. I'm not putting the green parts on a different layer than the red parts, for example, because it's not that detailed. I don't have to be like super careful. What color are his feet? What color did I make his feet? Oh, they're red too. Okay. I don't know. I might not have picked the color palette for the Chili Man actually, because he's originally based on an ad, a fake ad that Lydia drew into the back of Interdimensional 1. And I think she colored it. It was like one of the things in that book that she colored, and I think she picked all the palette for him. So I think I'm actually, it's like a rare case where I'm emulating somebody else's palette on one of our books, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, for those who don't know, this is an example of the Bad Ink extended universe, because he originally started, we didn't have plans to make him like a significant character. He was just a mascot of a fake hot sauce that we put an ad, Capsaicin Nebula hot sauce, that we put an ad in the back of Interdimensional 1. And we liked him so much we like wrote kind of a story around him. He became like a major part of issue 3. So there's a lot of like that kind of stuff in our books. Like we don't have a connected universe really, but there's like hints to a larger universe, or like that things are connected. Like I definitely feel like in issue 4 I want to have a character with Capsaicin Nebula hot sauce, but it's not like a plot point. It's just like a little Easter egg, Sort of like Quentin Tarantino does that. He has like a certain brand. He doesn't use any real products in his movies, so he makes up fake brands, and he always has the same brands like on billboards in the background of his movies. So it's kind of like that. Yeah, I use a lot of layers too, but when it's this small, like this character, so like relative size, like he's huge on the page here, and all the parts of him here are different layers. But on this one, he's tiny. I mean, he's really little, so I'm just going to make him all the same. I feel like I also at one point rendered him with teeth. Let me find it. Yeah. His teeth. Oh, the inside of his mouth is that like weird light green too. Yeah, so I have a choice here. Last time I drew his teeth, the only other time I've rendered his teeth, I made them yellow, which is like really creepy and like kind of gnarly. But it's sort of up to me to decide how much of that is the orange lighting from the fire that's being cast back onto his mouth and how much is that his teeth are actually yellow. I think it's scarier for him to just always have like weird yellow teeth. So I'm just going to do that here. Do I have that color? Let me add it to the samples. And I'll dull it a little bit because it's sort of being enhanced by the lighting, the orangish lighting of this panel. So I'll dull it a little bit. I'll call it, yeah, that's good. I'll call it chili teeth. All right. Let's see. So yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, I like that. I think that's cool. I think that's better than if they were pure white. Just adds a little bit of character to them. No, they're not gloomy. They're not like a continuous story, which like I think it kind of, to be honest, it kind of breaks people's brains. But anthology, they call it anthology storytelling. Like that used to be pretty popular. Like, I mean, most early comics were anthology. You know what I mean? They were like one-off stories. There would be like connected things that crossed over from volume to volume. But, you know, you think about like original EC comics like Weird Science or Tales from the Crypt. That's all short stories, or like Twilight Zone. I think a lot of people who are big manga fans kind of like expect things to be one continuous story, but I think the anthology storytelling is kind of like a lost art, to be honest. So we're bringing that back a little bit. I think it's interesting as people are kind of like getting more and more superhero fatigue nowadays to like kind of market ourselves as like, oh, you don't have to know all this lore or like this connected universe. Like you can pick up our comics and pick up issue 3 and read it, and it will be a self-contained story that you can enjoy. But I think it's also fun to say like, but if you know our universe and you know the other stuff, you'll pick up on little nods to the other stories, you know? So I've been trying to kind of lean into that a little bit as I like market our stuff, or like, I don't know. I think the world is, I don't know. My prediction as somebody who's kind of like, not a total expert, but is in the world of comics pretty heavily. Like I think it'll become an interesting selling point to say like, hey, you know, here's a new type of comic. Like you think you're burned out on extended universes and massive lore, you know, but that doesn't have to be how comics are made. Like you can pick up our stuff whenever you want and read it in 20 minutes, you know. All right, well, let's just color him on this one too. So we're just going to replicate the same thing here, and then we'll start going in with detail. I'll draw the little hot sauce bottle too. Vibes, yeah. We're all about vibes, man. Just chill. I watch a lot of streamers myself. I'm actually a big fan of like streaming as a genre. But man, some of those people that I watch have so much more energy than I could ever. I can't be on like that, you know. And it also, I think if I tried to be like, "Ooh, hey guys," like, I think I would come across like really false. I think people would be really like annoyed. So, you know, I don't know. I really don't want to do ASMR or anything like that, but I think being chill is like an underrated part of the internet. Well, maybe it's not underrated. I mean, isn't like one of the most popular channels the like lo-fi hip hop beats to study/relax to? feel like that proves that there's like a whole audience for it, you know? All right, so I'm just cheating. I called this layer Chili Man, but whatever. It really is just the bottle label detail layer. So I'm just gonna not even bother making a new layer. I'm just gonna put the lettering on the same layer. So if I turn this layer off, you'll just see everything disappear, but it doesn't matter. It's pretty striking to see a full black and white page with like these. It's not just color, it's like very bright colors. Like it's close to the basic primaries. So again, I have to figure out how to kind of like soften that or something. Yeah, I'm not sure. We'll figure it out. I actually don't mind the gray, the dark gray cap. I think it's okay. Cool, we just get to do that again. Let's do it again. That's fun. It's very subtle, small thing here, but this is the kind of stuff that like, it's so small, but just so you know my thought process, the bottle is a red bottle with a yellow label, right? And then he's holding the bottle in the little label artwork. I'm intentionally not making that yellow because it's so small that I just kind of want to suggest the shape of the bottle. And I also am going to be putting yellow fire behind it. And it's sitting on top of a yellow label. So I actually am going to leave the label on the mini bottle red so that it pops against all the elements that are behind it, if that makes sense. It's a super subtle thing that like, if I weren't streaming, I just would like not even think about it. I just instinctively do it, but I just realized that's what I did. Like that's why I made that decision. In general, with comic coloring, the smaller something is, the less. I know this sounds really obvious, but it's something that sometimes you forget when you're like really zoomed in and it's no longer small and it's filling up your whole screen. But you have to often zoom out and remind yourself of like how small things actually are and not get too in the weeds of like going in here, you know, and like trying to color all the detail, because the smaller something is, the less the less number of colors you have to use on it, if that makes sense. Because it's sort of like, you can imagine like in the real world, if something is very, very far away, sort of the numbers of colors that you see on that object start to get reduced and you just process it as a single kind of color. So for example, the planet Mars, if you see it up close, there's a lot of subtlety to the detail and the number of colors in it. But when you see it in the sky, it's just a red dot. So that's kind of like how you have to think about sizing and the amount of colors that you use. And that's like a way to save time, because you can get lost, like zooming way in, and all of a sudden you think this is something that you have to go in and color the label and color highlights on it, whatever. But it's really, you know, that big on the page. So it's you don't have to get lost in it, you know. You already subscribed. Welcome. I do think that one of the we had a ton of subs. Like I said, we were getting like 40,000 subs a month for a couple months there. I think one of the reasons why it slowed down is just because like there's only so many people who actually like are going to be interested in the kind of stuff we do, you know? Like at some point you reach a natural cap. Where you just like, I mean, how many more people beyond 200,000 are there that are going to be like wanting to sit here, you know, talking about the nuances of like color flatting a comic book panel? I mean, maybe more, but I do sort of think at some point you hit your saturation and then it's just like, okay, cool, you found your audience, they're here. Now you just like kind of, you know, and I'm not complaining. Like, I think it's cool. Like you found them, they're all here, they're all gathered in one place. Like now you get to keep making content for them, you know? Yeah, lost in the Zoom sauce, man. That's what we were doing. I'm already kind of lost in the Zoom sauce. I'm a little close, given that this bottle is pretty small on the page, but it also it also looks better to zoom in on when you're on stream, because like everybody can see more easily what you're doing. So part of why I'm more zoomed in than I might normally be, getting a little lost in the zoom sauce, is just because I'm live. So I don't know. This is not like the most exciting stuff. This is just color flatting. The really cool part is going to be when we finish flatting and we start actually figuring out how to kind of like semi-integrate this into the environment, because there's a lot of really interesting stuff we can do. All right. Also, I have to figure out how to handle the fire. I think I've already given myself the template for how to do the fire because we did it here. I think this is just the way you do the fire everywhere. It's this sort of like cartoony, like lemon yellow, pale yellow kind of like fire shapes. So we'll put that kind of coming out of his hand and behind the bottle. And that'll probably be a really interesting way to kind of like create some softer stuff that starts to like you can probably make embers and semi-transparent like shapes and stuff of like things being thrown off of the fire, and that can start to kind of like mask the stark sort of cell shaded quality of this red and yellow bottle, so that it starts to be a little bit more realistic, which will make it kind of like blend a little bit more into this world. Might be interesting too to put a color in her eyes, because she's looking at it. I feel like you might want to like, that would be a nice in and out. Like you get some color here with the lettering. You get some color here when she notices that the bottle is now red. You get 2 panels of a color bottle, and then you get like a little bit in her eyes. It'd be kind of interesting. Sort of enter and exit this like stark color with little details like that. Yeah, I mean maybe the reason why it's actually important to show the quote unquote like less important parts of the process, aka color flatting, is everybody thinks it's boring, so nobody ever like practices this stuff. And you know, your work kind of suffers for it if you don't know how to make like smart, simple color decisions early. No amount of like rendering can save it, you know. I have noticed that a lot of like most people ask us for advice. Like, what's one thing if I'm new to comics that would like help me? And I think one of them is don't ignore the quote unquote boring stuff. You know, the color flatting, the like kerning and letting on your lettering, like the really like nitty gritty in the weeds stuff that people kind of skip over because it's not very fun. It's kind of like grueling and slow. But I think that I can definitely tell a difference between a comic creator who pays attention to the, you know, the basics. They have a better foundation, and it sort of like comes through in the final work. And then of course people just get mad at me because I'm like, you know, you have to work on your fundamentals and it's not easy. And people are like looking for no, I wanted you to tell me what program to buy, and that you know, what program that I can buy that will instantly make my art good. I'm like, okay, well, that's not a thing. You got to actually do the work, and then people just get mad. One video that I really want to make that would be really fun. Like, I'm trying to think of more things that we can do for like long form content, you know, like 15, 20-minute videos for YouTube. One thing I really want to do is like do an entire comic page with nothing but like a pencil and a ballpoint pen, including like write out the script by hand, you know, do pencil roughs of it, then pencil it, then ink it, then letter it, like all completely analog with like the most like a, you know, a 20-cent pencil and a 20-cent ballpoint pen and like prove that you can make something like super compelling with absolutely no technology, no programs, no brush packs, no fancy like analog materials, nothing like that it's really about like understanding the fundamentals and understanding storytelling. I think that would be like a really cool, I think that would be actually be like a super cool video. Like the two of us like drop the tech to basically answer, like there's so many people who ask, what program are you using? What supplies should I buy? And then when you tell them, they're like, oh, well, that's too expensive, or like, I don't want to learn that or whatever. And I'm like, I kind of want to be like, okay, cool. Like you don't have to have any of this stuff. You know what I mean? Like you could make an entire comic book with a pencil. And in fact, if you showed up to a comic book store with like a cool comic and you said like, hey, I'm a local comic creator, I did this entire thing with a single pencil, like I think the person behind the counter would be like, oh yeah, we'll stock this. Like that's way cooler than if you had just done what everybody else does, you know? I think it would be a really cool video. And I think you could use it as a way to not just show show us making the comic, but like talk through why, okay, so we're going to like do rough thumbnails to kind of storyboard out the action, then like kind of talk about the fundamentals of that. You can use it as an excuse to talk about kind of like the fundamentals that everybody kind of skips that would then be applicable no matter what you're doing, All these Cloudy Eyes, all these streams get uploaded as VODs. I don't know how many people actually like sit and watch the VOD after the fact, but I put them all up, and I don't even think I monetize them so that they don't have ad breaks. Like you can just put on a 2-hour comic coloring stream, All right, that's pretty cool. So let's do some shading. So I'm going to use the same highlight color that I use on the actual Chili Man to do the highlights on the bottle. I'll set the brush to 50% and I'm just going to kind of like, just do it kind of a little rough, Again, this is not actually that big on the page, so we can kind of fake it, to be honest. Just a couple quick swipes of a lighter color, kind of just with a basic understanding of where highlights tend to fall. And you get something that looks believable. I don't even know how realistic this is, but it looks okay. Like it works for the purposes of this panel, right? If you want to go next level, though, what you do is you see how this cap overhangs the neck of the bottle. I'm just going to erase out the highlights right there. Boom. Now it looks like there's a shadow from the cap that's kind of like casting down onto the neck of the bottle. Hello, Fred the Cyborg. Welcome. Fred the Cyborg. I like that name a lot. That's fun. The problem is I just used the highlight color on... So, okay, so here the hot sauce is spilling out of the bottle. I colored it in kind of orange to make it pop from the bottle. But I just used that exact color to do the highlights. So maybe we do the highlights in a different color. Let's push the highlights. Let's try something. We're going to push the highlights more yellow. Let's try that. Yeah, so I'll just get the same kind of highlights going as the other panel. Just roughly copying what I did. A lot of people who work digitally would probably literally copy and paste what's on the left over on the right. I don't know. We actually kind of have an intentional analog quality to a lot of what we do. So, like, I think we kind of embrace the fact that if you draw this twice or do the shading, you know, paint it in twice by hand, it's a little off, it's a little different, but it makes it kind of look old school, like a pre-digital kind of comic. I actually like that. I like the lack of consistency where things, you draw the same shape twice and they're a little, I mean, it does help that Lydia can actually draw things over and over and they look pretty close, but I think the slight difference between these two panels is actually that gives it a lot of character, you know. It's another reason why people are always asking like how to get better, and they're asking about techniques, and I'm like, sometimes you just got to draw stuff, you know. You don't have to worry about all these tips and tricks for like how to use the program in a super specific way. You can just paint it in twice, you know. Use a marker. Pretend you're using a marker and just do it twice. It'll add more character to it, you know. So the hot sauce still has to go more red. So let's try making the hot sauce darker. How does this feel? Oops. Oh, that's kind of nice. Okay, we'll do that. See how, okay, so see how there's like starting to be an orange gradient up top? I like that. Yeah, that's cool. Then it's like lava. Then it's like really freaky. It's like kind of like coming out of the top. It's like coming out of the top orange and like fading to this darker color. And both colors, this bottle base color is like a red color, and both the darker red at the bottom and the lighter orange at the top pop from it, from that base bottle color. I really struggled with my perfectionism, but embracing the imperfections made my art go to a different level. Yeah. It is true, like I think comics should feel like they're drawn by a person. And I think once you embrace that, it actually like weirdly makes your stuff look more professional, you know? Ooh, okay, cool. So also what happened here is I colored in the hot sauce. I accidentally had it bleed over the cap, and I like love this, like, whoever said that maybe it should be like a reddish brown was right, because it's like the shading that I was doing on the bottle accidentally bled over a little bit onto this gray. So I'm going to do that over here too. Just grab this orange. And just give it a little bit of burgundy color. Not too much, but just a little. Yeah, that's cool. Hot sauce do be getting darker when exposed to air. Oh yeah, that's true. It's that oxidation, that oxidation steez that the hot sauce got. All right. Oh, that's kind of fun. I just noticed this. So he like comes alive, right? And there's like flames coming out of his hands. And when he kind of like retreats back into like the label as like a flat piece of artwork, there's still like a plume of smoke coming off of where he like dropped the fire. That's like a fun detail. I think this is going to work though. It's cool. Let me get this kind of like cup or vase or something that's in the background. Let me just get that in. I think I'll just steal the color, this gray color that I used over here. It's like a 40, maybe 30% gray. I don't know. I just want to get that in so that I have a sense of like what that shape is doing to the composition of the panel. Yeah, nothing crazy. Just like suggest the shape in so that like we know that it's there. Because this thing is on a shelf with a bunch of other bottles. So having this in here is going to help the composition a little bit. And also just your eye understand like what's going on. Yeah, the art is all traditional, like inked on pen and paper and scanned and then digitized. The way you digitize this stuff is that you scan it and then you use like something called threshold and levels, and you basically like, here, I'll show you. You get all the you push all of the paper, like the parts that are paper and not ink, you push those to pure white. So when you scan it and set up the file, it looks like this. And what you do is you actually like, when you basically get you use settings to push it so that there's only black and only white. You know what I mean? Like there's no gray tones left. So it's like really stark line work. And then when you have it set up this way, you can select all the white instantly, because if you use like the magic wand tool or a quick selection tool, it knows exactly what to do because there's only black pixels or only white pixels. So if you just like click to select, you get a perfect selection of the white. And then you can just delete the white out. Like you can just press delete and you won't grab any of the wrong pixels when you do that. So when you delete the white out, then you have transparency all behind the line work. And then you can put all your color layers underneath it. So that's how you scan like pen and ink artwork on paper to set it up for digital coloring. There's like more steps than that, but that's the basic idea. And you don't have to ink traditionally, but I will say that there's a lot that happens that's sort of unpredictable when you're working on paper that if you can embrace, it makes your stuff really interesting. You can buy digital inking brushes that will give you these kinds of texture lines, but there's another dimension to like hand inking, and a lot of it is just the unpredictability of like actual liquid ink on paper. You sort of start to like embrace it as you go, and you find yourself making really interesting choices. Yeah, scanning is a whole art form in and of itself, to be honest. You have to have kind of like a knowledge of how your scanner works. Like you actually have to spend some time with a particular model of scanner to be able to kind of get to know it a little bit, I guess, and then how you dial in your settings. You kind of evolve over time until you can get it right. It's harder than I think people realize, but if you can do it, it's really rewarding. You know what I mean? I kind of compare it to listening to music on vinyl. It's like more of a pain, but it is really fun to like get a record out and put it on and listen to it. It gives you that extra, like, I don't know that vinyl sounds better like some people say, but I think the experience of doing it is like fun, you know? It's funny because the process of coloring in scanned line work was the standard process for most of my youth. Like in the late 90s, they switched to doing, I remember Marvel switched to doing digital colors in the late 90s. But everybody was still doing ink on paper. So that was how we learned in like the 2000s, was everybody did that. You just drew, whatever you drew, you scanned and then you colored it digitally. And then only later did people start to actually get like iPads with, you know, the Apple Pencil and actually have the ability to do more controlled line work digitally. And then some people started to completely go digital. But we actually just do what we learned how to do that we always have done, you know, which is like, to us was like the comic book workflow was like ink on paper, scan it, color it in Photoshop, you know. The girls say hi. Are the girls a dog? Looks like you have a dog as your profile picture. Man, I love dogs. Like a lot. I much rather be around most dogs most of the time. All right, so I'm gonna do the fire that he's sort of like, we're basically replicating this feel, right? Where he's like throwing fire out of his hands. It's like burning up the environment. We're gonna do that here. And then it's gonna get really interesting because we're gonna start to make, this is a very cartoony figure, but we're gonna, and the fire is kind of cartoony. It's got this like cartoony fire shape with the points. But I want it to feel like it's starting to become real fire. And so it'll be interesting to kind of like combine the two looks. So we'll just get this in. And this is going to be a giant game of kind of like guessing a little bit. So you see how sometimes Lydia's given me the actual shape of the fire, right? Like down here, it's a little clearer. But up here, there starts to be kind of like vague lines. Right here, right here, right here. So it's kind of up to me. Sometimes as a color, when you're doing the colors, it's your decision. Beyond just color choice, you're starting to actually decide about the forms of things. Like how far up does this fire go before it just turns into like dots, you know what I mean? Because like up here, it's going to be like this. It's just going to be like embers being thrown off, right? But down, like how far up did the more defined fire shapes go? That's kind of like my choice. And that's just going to be something that I decide based on like what composition I like how much of the page I think should be certain shapes and like what that does for the composition overall. Mary says, say hi to me, baby. Hi. Yeah, I think a lot of publishers, Ryan for short. I think some publishers do this process. Like I think there are a lot of established comic book artists who are always going to be working, you know, on paper, and then it's scanned and sent to a colorist to do this way. I think that's still pretty common, but I think a lot of younger people, maybe just for convenience, use like an iPad or something like that. And they still seem sort of like, a lot of people who follow us seem sort of surprised that we still do it this way, when I don't know if they realize how much of the industry still does it this way, to be honest. Also, it is more expensive. I have to be like really acknowledge that, like, especially if you're younger, just starting out, it is much more expensive to use analog materials. You know, like ink is not cheap. The watercolor brushes that you use with ink are not cheap. So I understand that like a lot of people use digital because it's a little bit more cost effective. But man, if you can do it, it's worth experiencing. It's worth learning, just even if you only use digital, it's worth trying analog just so you start to understand kind of like what you're simulating. Like a lot of the digital inking brushes are basically trying to emulate the feel of kind of a grungy brush or dip pen. And once you've used the real thing, I think you use the digital tools more effectively. You kind of understand what they're trying to do with their, you understand why these digital inking brushes are programmed the way they are. You know what I mean? Like the effects they're trying to give you as a brush designer, Yeah, see, I'm probably putting too much detail in this, but I don't know. It is fun to draw fire, so I'm just going to do it. Whatever. All right, I'm going to set the brush to like 30%, and I'm going to do a layer of just like embers. Check this out. A lot of people want to know what brushes I use. So far in this entire stream, I've been using the same default round brush. I just sometimes change the opacity of it. But you don't need fancy brushes to color comics, you know what I mean? Like you just need smart color choices, and you just need to like be able to vary the size of the brush with pressure, vary the opacity sometimes to get some different effects, Did I bring my own coffee to the stream? No, because I had a whole thermos of coffee this morning, and I'm like, if I have any more coffee right away, I'm gonna die. Also, making coffee these days for me is such a thing. Like I can't do it fast. I have to like grind the beans and like put the filter in the pour over thing because I've like become such a coffee snob. I hate it. I hate this for myself. I used to be a pod man. It was so fast. Now I've turned into such a pretentious coffee snob. I'm like, I must grind the beans and then measure them. It takes me like 20 minutes to make coffee. I mean, I have a whole library of brushes too. I do use special brushes. I don't want to say like I don't use special brushes, But in fact, I'll use some right now. We'll use a special brush. I will use like a grunge brush to kind of like knock back some of this some of these embers that I drew, because I drew too many embers. Now they just look like bubbles, but I want to like grungily knock them back. So let's use like one of these big grunge brushes. Oh, that's not a grunge brush. That's hair. What is this? Yeah, this one's good. Yeah, that's cool. All right. So I just want to give the feeling of kind of like embers, We'll do a lot more layers. Oops. We'll do a lot more layers on the fire to kind of get it more realistic feeling, but that works for now. One thing that I don't love about digital coloring is it's really easy to accidentally create like really flat shapes. So I almost always try to like lay down flats and then put a bunch of texture over it to kind of like soften it a little bit or make it feel less stark. Right now, the fire that I'm drawing is really suffering from like digital starkness. Like it feels like kind of a flat, like pointy shape without a lot of character. So one of the things I want to do is like go over it with a bunch of texture and gradients and stuff and get it to like kind of feel less like a blob, you know what I mean? A pointy blob. Yeah, grunge. I always grunge stuff up. Grunge is a good word. Pen. Most of the time, that's how I describe my coloring style, is like digital grunge, you know? Like, it's digital for the convenience. It's so much easier to color digitally, obviously. But I use a bunch of grunge that is essentially simulating analog. Like, I use a lot of halftones. I use a lot of, like, watercolor speckles and paint splashes and paper pulp textures. Like, a lot of stuff that's been scanned and digitized off of analog material, you know? All right, that's probably good enough. Oh man, there's a lot of fire, so we got to do all of this. I'm going to make a new layer called fire back, because all the fire that I'm going to do on this side is going to sit. So like, it's going to be really easy to accidentally cover up all these little elements, like his arm, the little chilies here. So I'm going to move fire back down, and now I can like draw fire without going over this stuff. Yeah, I really need to like buckle down in February and color this thing. Like, spend less time writing scripts and making content, and spend a lot more time like coloring. Just knock it out. Like, we'll have some lean weeks on the content where I'll probably only be making like 1 or 2 videos a week, to be honest, but it's going to be in service of finishing the comic that people actually want to see, and then I can ramp the content back up, you know what I mean? I'll try to live stream, but it's going to be really hard to make like robust, really highly produced content, because it's like 3 hours cutting a really good short is 3 hours I could use to like make a huge dent in a page. So I'm trying to figure out how to balance it. This might be the last issue of Interdimensional that I color myself. I don't know. It's getting really hard to do everything. I might have to like pay a color artist or something, but there's not a lot of people that I would trust, I guess, to like do this whole thing I don't know. There's a lot of really talented people, but I'm very like picky, and I have trouble letting go, you know? So if I do that, it's going to be nerve-wracking. Even if I get somebody really good, I'll try not to make that person's life a nightmare where I'm like micromanaging them, you know what I mean? Like, I'll try to make sure that I find somebody that I think that's what it is. I want to find somebody that I inherently really trust their style, so that I don't have to be like lording over them. Again, if I decide not to color issue 4, which is likely given that I seem to have less and less time, I'm gonna have to find somebody really, really good. But maybe that can be part of the Kickstarter for issue 4, is like let's get serious about raising a lot of money so that we can actually pay a really like talented person their fair rate, you know? Oh, do you have any tips of how I can format a comic for printing, like the order of pages and stuff? Yeah, so setting up a comic for print is actually a little bit harder than I think people realize, because you don't just, there's a couple things. So you have to have you're right, Amir, you're right. You have to have a certain DPI, so your file has to be set up at 300 or higher. Most printers print at 300 DPI. Most people's files are 600 DPI, just to have the extra information. I think some printers can print at 350 DPI, but that's pretty rare. If you use any standard like comic printing service, like they want a 300 DPI file. But it's not that you just give them all your pages at 300 DPI. It's that you actually have to set up your file. You have to what's called paginate it, which is it's not like page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4. It's actually like if you pull the staples out of the comic book and you take the folios out, like the folded pages out, what you realize is that like page 1 is across from page 30 and page 2 is across from page 28, like, because they have to print it and then like put them all together, fold them, and in order to get the correct reading order, you actually have to set up the file with the pages in like a non-intuitive order. So you have to kind of like, you have to actually like, what we do is Lydia actually makes like a little dummy book where she actually takes like a bunch of strips of paper, folds them, and then like writes, you know, page 1, page 2, page 3, and then like we take it back apart and look at like how it should be paginated. So that's kind of tricky. People can help you with that though. Like if you really want to print your comic, you can like work with the printer and say like, hey, this is my first time doing this. Can you help me? And they'll help you because they want your business, obviously. But setting up your file for print is a little bit more tricky than I think people might realize initially. It's a little bit of a pain. I don't really recommend that people print their comic if they're new to making comics, because there's kind of no reason to. Like, you have the ability to release your stuff digitally or on Webtoon or as PDFs on your website. Like, it's expensive and it's a pain to print comics. So the internet exists now, which is cool, you know. You don't have to release your stuff printed in order to be like a quote unquote real comic creator. All right, so let's make some fire texture. So again, I don't love how like stark these shapes are. The fire feels very like digital, very stark. So I'm gonna grab a halftone brush. I actually like this. So this brush paints halftone dots. The size is actually okay. Like the dot size for what I'm doing is actually okay. So I'm gonna embrace it. I'm just gonna go over the edges of what I did in parts. Kind of make it feel less like stark and digital. Maybe I'll even make this texture layer that I'm doing like less than 100% opaque. This is kind of the look I was hoping for. Like, I want it to feel like this whole color bottle is like breaking into this universe or fading in. And I feel like having it be kind of like textured around the edges is like a way to do that. Let me actually try to put this behind the whole bottle to see how it looks. I have no idea if this is going to work. So I'm just going to make a layer behind the whole bottle. I'm going to pick like a... Maybe I'll just sample a color off of this, like this semi-orange, semi-red. I don't know, it sort of works. It looks kind of weird. The orange against gray is hard, so maybe we don't do that. That's orange against gray can hurt your eyes a little bit, so maybe we go yellow. Let's try it. Sort of like feels like it's glowing. I don't know. It kind of works. I don't know. I may decide not to do this, but for now, this is kind of like an interesting look. It's really hard to get the right pressure though. This brush is super sensitive, and I'm sure I could like tweak the settings, but I'm too lazy. What software? Yeah, I'm using Photoshop. It's just basic Photoshop, which, no. People have opinions about Photoshop, but it's what I learned in 2002. It's all there was in 2002. So I'm kind of like in the Adobe pipeline for the rest of my life. It's like what I know how to use. It's interesting. It's definitely an interesting look. I could try to add some orange to it. Sort of works. I don't know. I kind of like it. We'll see. I think it would only be in this panel though, because this is the panel where it like fully breaks through, where it would like have this weird glowing effect around it. Oh, nice. All right. You've revealed your secret identity, Amir, but that's okay. I'll keep calling you Amir. Yeah, maybe transparent white. I don't know. White can be a little... I don't know. We could try it. Let's try it. We could just try making this... I mean, the interesting thing about making the glow around the bottle white is that it would feel like it was sort of like... The white would feel like part of the black and white world, which might make this feel like it's breaking through into this world. I don't know. Yeah, I don't hate that. It's sort of an interesting... It's sort of an interesting choice. Maybe it's just a good way to lighten it a little bit. We'll try that. And then I need to kind of like bring some character into the fire so it's not just all yellow. So let me, how did I do it last time? It looks like I just took like a surprisingly dark orange. Oh, it's not orange. Okay, so if I zoom way in, you can see it's not orange. It's like a almost like a salmon color. Let's add that to our Chili Man palette. Call that like fire shading. What's nice is that when you use this kind of like more pink color inside yellow, it's kind of starts to push it a little bit more orange, or that's how your eye perceives it. It's kind of cool. So I'm just going to make a layer called Fire Dark. Let's see. I'm going to do the same thing I was doing before, where I just use my regular round brush, but I'm going to set it to like 30%. 30, 30. That's actually kind of... It's a little dark. Oh, but you know what? We could try it on like a overlay. Let's flip through some blending modes and see what we can do with this. Maybe it's okay. I just don't love... I don't love it. Here, let me try it again. I'm going to make my brush way smaller. I think the secret is to make this more like smaller dots that feel more like embers. Yeah, that's better. You can just go in and kind of like cover up some of the stark edges that make the fire feel kind of digital. Yeah, this will really help. And just kind of focus on doing the darker parts closer to the origin point of the fire. Yeah, good luck recovering from that migraine. I used to get migraines so bad I couldn't like sit up. So, best of luck. I don't know. I don't love this color. Let me try an orange. Yeah, I think that's better. I think orange is the move. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this orange in, and then I'm going to, you'll see what I'll do. I'm going to erase out the orange when it gets close to certain objects so that the objects feel like they have like a glow around them. So watch this. So I'm going to do this orange here, right? And then I'm going to go in and actually erase it back out around the chilies, so that they have this kind of like nice little like defined glow around them. Just to make them pop a little bit more, you know? It's subtle, but it makes like a big difference. I'll do it around his feet too. Something like that. And then, okay, so now we get to kind of like start to play with the lighting of the environment, which is cool. So I have to create the sense that it's kind of like throwing light off onto this panel. And I think the first thing we can do is just like literally take like a yellow color and just add like a big soft glow coming off of it on top of all the layers. So we'll put this at the very top. I'm going to call it like, first I gotta label some of my layers so I don't get lost, but we're going to call this like overall glow. And I will just do this. And that's insane. So we're gonna flip through some blending modes. Lighten is actually okay. So I think a lot of people, I don't know how many programs besides Photoshop use blending modes like this. I think a lot of them do actually, but there's one called difference and exclusion, and they look awful, but I actually use them a lot, not actually for final artwork, but so I can kind of like see where the shape that I'm altering, like where its boundaries are. So if it's a light colored shape, you can flip it to like difference or exclusion and see all of a sudden it flips to dark and you can see exactly like where your soft circle is. So that's helpful. Because then I sort of know what to look for when it's like affecting the overall panel. Like I want to pick a blending mode where I still see the boundaries of it, you know what I mean? So I'm not losing the detail of the shape that I put in. So overlay is probably the winner, but let's make it like an actual proper glow, and maybe just like try to like favor the edges a little bit. So I'm going to erase out the middle of this glow a little bit. Yeah, so if you look, the middle is actually not really being affected by this glow as I turn the layer on and off, but the edges really are. It's kind of nice. Maybe it's a little bright. I'm going to bring it down to like 85. It's pretty freaky, man. It's surprising how bright that looks, you know, contrasting to all the other stuff on the page. All right, so we'll do that. I like that. I think it needs something though. Well, let's shade the shelf that it's sitting on. There's like the suggestion of some detailing, so let's shade that. But we'll do it in black and white because this is like a black and white world. The only thing that should be in color is the actual bottle and the character. This little like lip of the shelf down here, it should just be like pretty standard shading. And we gotta go darker, 60%. And then we can put like a lighter, so like the front lip of the shelf would be kind of cast in shadow because there's like a bright thing right behind it. But this side of the shelf would be really bright because it's catching the light. So we'll do this. And then we'll use overlay layers to kind of like affect the color of it. Maybe this whole panel should actually have a slight yellow cast to it. Like, what happens if I actually, maybe like an orange. What happens if I put like a subtle orange on the background? Yeah, see, that might be the way to do it. Is just give it a little bit of like, this panel is like a real moment, a focal point moment on the page where like the rules of reality break down for a second. Sort of interesting. It's a little, I don't love the like orange on top of gray. It's a little sickly. So maybe we just pick a different orange. Or red, should it be red? Let's try that. Interesting. Yeah, that's kind of nice. I like this like sort of semi-burgundy color that you get when you put a red on top of a gray. But I think we can actually affect the edges a little bit, so it feels even like we're adding even more to the sense of like a glow around the bottle. And I'm just going to add a glow where the fire crosses over the front here, like a little orange glow underneath the fire. So it really feels like it's affecting the environment. I like that a lot. And this vase would be getting some light, some orange. Like it's not just the bottle that's color, the light from the bottle's color. So it would be like reflecting colored light onto things. So it's like, let's get something on the vase that kind of affects it. Because right now the vase is too gray. It's just sort of, this feels stark, you know? But I think if I put a pale yellow on it, the trick though is not to pick a color that's gonna like run together with all the fire. So maybe orange is the way to go. This whole thing is a giant exercise in contrast. I mean, you can see how I'm trying not to deviate too much from my palette. Like if something isn't working, I'm trying to pick another color from my palette that I've already established to try to really limit myself so stuff really like feels tight together as one look. But I'm sometimes like realizing that one color up against another color doesn't work, so I have to just constantly be like changing my mind, you know? Yeah, the orange-red gradient in the background is like, I think it's adding a lot of character to it, you know? I think the bottle should have an, like this yellow is way too, this like yellow color that the label is like way too stark. So let me try something. I'm gonna put a gradient glow on it from the bottom. That's kind of nice. It like really changes the characteristic of the page. Check this out. So without the glow, you get this like kind of sickly yellow stark rectangle shape. And with the glow, you get kind of more of a cohesive feeling of the chili pepper character popping off of the bottle because it's starting to separate him more from the background. It's pretty cool. It completely erases all the detail that I put in into the fire down here. But maybe we can bring some of it back by actually erasing. Like if I go in and I actually like erase some of this that I added and try to get the tops of the flames back, that might actually be really interesting. Yeah, that's nice. It's just giving it a little bit of like a little bit of contrast back. It really feels like there's like a glow there now, which is pretty cool. It's like quite an optical illusion. There's a lot of glow there. I don't know that I like that I erased. So this background color has this kind of like burgundy pink color. I erased it back to gray over here in the top left of the panel. Here. Top left right here, where this dot is. But I don't know that I actually like that. Like I actually think that it's a little too fiddly to have so many different shapes conforming to the edges of the bottle. So I'm gonna delete that mask. Oops. Oh, wrong layer. Dang, I got too many layers, man. I'm losing track. Here we go, down here. I'm gonna delete that. Yeah, I think this panel works better if it's just a stark shape. And that's less to do with the actual panel itself and more to do with the overall page composition. Like I think it's more interesting if there's a panel that's like, here, I'll turn the lines off. I think it's more interesting if there's a panel, let me do that again. It's more interesting if there's a panel that's like one stark shape. It just like gives you a focal point for the page. When I was trying to erase some of this pink color back to gray, it was getting too fiddly. Like I think it's good to have kind of bold shapes and bold, simple graphical choices to make your page kind of pop. That's cool. And then we can kind of like fade him back to like to black and white a little bit. Like the bottle for a moment like flares up into full color and then starts to dissolve back into like nondescript black and white. So like check this out. If I go to this panel over here on the right, and I think you can do this in Photoshop with a white gradient. It's been a while since I've done this. Let's see if it works. You take white and you make a white gradient, and then you set it to something. There's some blending mode that turns white into like a desaturator. Am I making this up? I swear this is a thing. Oh, man, I swear it's something like this. Okay, well, it doesn't matter. What we will do... it's saturation. Yeah, it's saturation. I'm pretty sure... Although that looks weird. Why does that look weird? But yeah, the idea is that it would be like fading back to black and white here. We can just do it with a black and white adjustment layer, hue saturation layer. But yeah, that's like basically the idea I want to do is like it's starting to fade back into a black and white, object so that it sort of reintegrates itself back into the world when she like catches a glimpse of it for just a second, it like becomes this bright color thing and then it kind of like fades back into black and white. Ooh. Lord Sauron, I bought the 1 and 2 digital copies. Can I print them out to have paperback version? You mean like you yourself print them? Yeah, you own them, right? I feel like I wouldn't be offended if you did that. Obviously we're going to like reprint all of our comics, but when I finish this issue, we're also reprinting 1 and 2. So, you can get actual copies of it then if you want to buy them. But for now, if you want to print out your own copies, like, hell yeah. Yeah, it's cool. It's just that it's subtle. Okay, so I just fixed it. But it's subtle, so it's just like... But you see how the very bottom of the bottle here on the right... like, it's kind of fading back to black and white? It's like turning back into a plain object in this world. I think it's cool. And we can actually it'd be cool to continue this trend by doing a little bit of a gradient of this background burgundy color on this panel. So check this out. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like fading back into reality a little bit. It's subtle, but there's like an overall sense that it's like returning to normal, which is cool. It would be interesting, Infinite Fur. It would be an interesting economic like math exercise to figure out the cost of buying our comics digitally, and then the cost of the ink to print them out, versus just waiting for us to reprint them and just paying cover price for printed copies. Like, is it actually more expensive because printer ink is so expensive? Is it actually more expensive to like print out our comics yourself than to just buy them when we release them? Like, that's a funny thing to think about. Like, it's like piracy that doesn't save you money. I have no idea. My guess is that like if you printed it on full color on an inkjet printer, it's more expensive to print the digital editions of our comics than to just spend $12 an issue to buy them. All right, so we got to do the smoke here. I'm going to just do the smoke in like kind of like a grayish orange. And we'll do the same thing where the smoke it'll be color up at the top, but it'll fade back to black and white on the bottom. That'll be kind of cool. Well, thank you, Lord Sauron. You are more than welcome to print out. I honestly, if somebody buys our comics digitally and they want to like, I don't know, make something with them or like, I don't know, remix them somehow or print them out. I don't know. I'm not really that pressed about that kind of stuff. Like, to me, that feels like more opportunities to have somebody like enjoy your stuff and maybe like help you promote it versus like stealing. I don't know. I don't think we would go after somebody for like something like that, you know? Like the only thing that would really bother me is if somebody took our comic and then said they did it and like was selling it as their own. Like obviously like that's not cool. But if somebody like, or like made merch out of the artwork and then was selling it and making money without us. But like if somebody wanted to like make their own desktop background or phone background out of our comic, like I would like repost it. Like if they made a video showing like, hey, I took your digital comic, I like made my own desktop background or I printed out my own copy for myself to read, like I would like repost that. You know what I mean? Like I would be like, oh, this is awesome. Somebody cares enough to do this. That's great. I'm not really that pressed about that kind of stuff, you know? You should charge more for your comics. Look, at some point, you are fighting the free market a little bit. Like people have a perception of what things should cost. And even though we put all this effort into them, a lot of people don't care. They just won't buy it if it's above a certain price. You know what I mean? And that's just the unfortunate reality of kind of what we do. But I will say that we do monetize our content. You know what I mean? Like, so we make a little bit of money making videos about the making of. So all the time that we spend here in this stage doing the making of is not unpaid for. Do you know what I mean? Like, I mean, we don't make a ton of money because you don't make a lot of, like, I don't know if anybody knows this, but YouTube Shorts, which is primarily what we make, like they do not pay well. Like you are not living off of YouTube Shorts revenue in this economy. But we make a little bit of money, like maybe enough to like offset all the time that it takes to do this. You know what I mean? Like monetizing your process is like a big part of being an artist in today's world. So every single thing I do, I like live stream it or I screen record it. I scheme a way to turn it into content and then we try to monetize that content. So I would like to charge more, but at some point I think you do run into people just like, you know, we probably should charge $25 or $30 for an issue given how much work goes into it. But if you showed up at a con or something with a $30 comic and it was 40 pages, I think people would laugh you out of the room, you know? And no amount of me pleading with them and being like, no, like, look at how hard I worked. Like, I don't think that's going to change their mind. You know what I mean? So I think getting clever about things like merch, like making shirts out of your characters, monetizing your content, I think that's like the way you offset some of the time that you invest. You know what I mean? You turn everything into an opportunity to make money, for better or for worse. That's kind of the world we live in, you know? Although I do appreciate the compliment. I know you mean that as a compliment, like how much effort we put into them. But it's tough, man. People are very focused on what they are getting for their money. You know what I mean? They want to know what's in it for them, you know? That's kind of fun. This is super simple, but it's really effective. So basically what I've created is kind of this macro story. These two panels have this kind of like story that the story for these two panels is on this side, on the left side, we're full color reality breaking into the black and white reality, right? Like full glow, full intrusion. Then the next panel, it starts to kind of like fade away. Like there was just this moment of this thing breaking into the reality, and it starts to fade back into the black and white world. So we've got this gradient up top that fades away into gray. The smoke is there, but it's fading into black and white. The bottle itself is starting to turn back to black and white. It's cool. It's a cool little like there's a lot of storytelling here. You know what I mean? Like you can just look at these two pages and you start to understand kind of like the rules of this reality break. yeah, there's something there. It's cool. Which means we could continue it into this panel where the red is starting to come in. You know what I mean? Let's try that. Oh man, I went back too far. Okay, so I'm just gonna fade this red on a little bit. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. It like starts to come in. It starts to enter her reality over here. Like the red fades in. Then in the middle, you're like full color breakthrough. Then you're on fading back out. So maybe we don't put color in her eyes. I was going to put a color in her eyes, but I think the story is that by the time we get to this panel of her looking at it, it's kind of like gone. I think this moment is her wondering if that was real, what she just saw. So there's no longer something color for her to look at. It's kind of fun. Have you seen Godzilla 1? I haven't seen it yet. I like Godzilla. Like, I'm a big Godzilla fan. When I was younger, I was obsessed with like in like a jokey way. Like, I really liked to watch and laugh at like the 60s and 70s Godzilla movies, like Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. Like, they're really cheesy, and that's why I love them. Like the bad Godzilla versus King Kong is one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. Like the original Godzilla versus King Kong with like the terrible model cities and like the little trees that they throw at each other. I like love those movies. So it's like weird for me to see like high quality, not bad special effects Godzilla movies. But I'm all for it. I want to see it. I'm not like a Godzilla mega fan who like watches them all. Like, I know that they've been making them for years and years, and there's a whole community of people who like import them when they come out in Japan and watch them. And like not all of them cross over to the US through like mainstream box office release. I'm not one of the people who like watches every single one. But I did have like a period in my teenage years where I was trying to watch like all the cheesy ones on DVD. Mystery Science Theater did a couple of them. And I loved watching them like riff on those. It's super fun. But I'll check out Godzilla 1. Which one is the one that's like Matt Fraction? I think Matt Fraction, the comic book writer. It's a TV series on Apple TV that he was involved with. I think it has Kurt Russell in it. Which one is that? Is that a Godzilla thing, or is that just like a monster series? Because I really want to see that too, because Matt Fraction is like a really amazing writer, and I thought it was cool that he was like crossing over from comics to like a limited Apple TV series. I know he was involved in that somehow. All right, cool. So we're doing good. Like, I feel like these two panels are actually turning out they're pretty much done, you know? Like, I don't want to overdo them. I'm just putting the shelf shading here on the front. Maybe Little Chili Man needs his glow. So if you see on this page, I spent a lot of time rendering, or actually a better example is this one. I spent a lot of time rendering this rim lighting around him, this like yellow highlighting around the edges. It really brings a lot of character to him. So maybe he needs that when he's coming off the bottle here, like just to give him a little bit of character. Okay, he's small, but I think even at a small size, I think you'll really feel that kind of edge highlighting, and it'll make him more 3D, and it'll add to that sense that he's like walking off the bottle. You know what I mean? LPTV, hello, welcome. Yeah, maybe I'll do that. So we'll go to my palette. Luckily, I sampled a color and called it Chili Highlights, so I have it ready to go. And I'll just do it here. Just some edge highlighting, nothing crazy. And I actually may want to go, so I'm really zoomed in. This is actually not that big on the page. So I may actually want to go like thicker on the edge highlighting than I normally would, because it's actually, it might need to be thicker for you to see it at this size. So I'm going to go a little bit more edge highlighting than I would, like normally I would do, like I'm really zoomed in, right? Normally I would do like that, like something subtle. But when you zoom all the way back out, I think it's way too little. So I'm going to like do more than it seems like I should here. Because when I zoom back out, it won't seem as crazy. Yeah, that makes me, right now I'm like cringing because that's like way too much of a bar of highlight, but I think you actually need it at this size. Oh, I'm using the wrong color though. I'm using the green highlight, so that's easy to fix. So we have to use the red highlight for my palette. Yeah, that's nice. That actually adds a lot. Yeah, this would be a good IRL hot sauce mascot. Hot Ones, Batting Studios Hot Ones collab when? I really want it to be like the worst hot sauce. Like by worst, I mean hottest. Like I want this to be like number 10. Like when they're interviewing the celebrity, I want this one to be the one that like ends them. Because he's like kind of this like cute mascot. Oh, nice. I'm glad you like the shorts. I'm going to try to keep doing shorts. I'm just not going to be, at one point I was uploading every day, which is like really hard. Like that's a lot of editing, you know? I'm going to try, but doing the coloring to actually release this book is going to keep me from being able to do content as often, but I'll try to stream so you can at least see progress, you know? All right. There you go. It's nice. Those highlights really do add like some dimension to him. I don't really need to go further than that though, because it's not that big on the page. Do I color with Wacom or mouse? I'm using a Wacom. I don't know if you can see the Wacom pen. Here's my... Can I do this without unplugging it? Here's the tablet. So I'm just using like it's called an Intuos, Wacom Intuos tablet. And unlike a lot of people, I don't have the setup that lets me color directly on the screen. I actually am using an old school Wacom with the pen, and I've got this so dialed in that I know exactly where my hand... I've been doing this since 2000... I mean, I think I got my first Wacom in 2002. It's been over 20 years. So I've got this like so dialed in where I know exactly like where my hand is and where the mouse will be, that I can like I can usually drop my hand and it's like exactly in the right spot. So there you go. I never felt the need to switch to one, like an iPad where you color directly on the screen, because I can do it all like looking up and coloring on the side. So there you go. I don't know if that's better or worse. It's probably better for my neck and back, because I'm able to like sit up and do this versus like hunch over a screen and color on the screen, you know? But there you go. Oh, I forgot to color the fire here. So there is a little bit of fire on the label. Yeah, let's put that in. Got my first Wacom in 2011 and didn't use it until 2018. Yeah, it's hard. They're hard. It can be like I remember when I first started using a Wacom versus a mouse, I felt like I had switched to my left hand and was trying to draw. Like it was so awkward and I hated it. And it took me a really long time to actually get like comfortable with it where it felt like natural to use. And now I don't even use a mouse even when I'm just like browsing the internet, you know? Or if I play like Age of Empires or something, like I use a Wacom. And I feel actually it's like amazing, by the way. If you ever play RTS games like Age of Empires 2 or StarCraft or something, a Wacom is like amazing for it because you can like quickly grab like draw boxes around your troops and then like send them places, you know? Just a little pro tip for you. Just a little gaming pro tip for you that like 2% of there's the Venn diagram of people who have a Wacom and play StarCraft has got to be pretty narrow, right? Like there's probably very little overlap there, right? But that's like a really well-kept secret, I think, in the world of RTS. Oh, so the good news is that I know a lot of people are saying that our videos are helpful. So I think tomorrow we're going to launch, if everything goes well, we're going to launch our Discord server. We have like a Batting Studios Discord where we're going to have like, we just want it to be a place where people can like ask questions or like ask for a critique or like talk to each other or show off their art. So I don't know. We're long overdue in starting a Discord, but somebody really kind like reached out and helped us set it up, and we're going to have some help moderating it. So we can hopefully continue the vibes of like, you know, getting into the weeds on how to make comics and tutorials and all that stuff. So we're going to try to launch that tomorrow. It's all set up, so hopefully that'll become a thing. All right, so I'll just get the fire in. So this panel is the actual artwork, like in our universe. This is the packaging of the hot sauce, like as it appears in stores or whatever. Because this panel is when he like comes to life and becomes more than just like a flat label on a bottle, but then he kind of returns to his natural form, which is artwork on a bottle. So I have to decide, the fire here is all bright yellow. He's like throwing bright yellow fire. But I think if you were actually designing a hot sauce label with this color palette, I think you would make the fire like orange, right? Because you'd want it to kind of pop from the yellow background of your label. If that was the colors that you were being forced to use like as a hot sauce label designer. So it's a little weird that they don't match, but I think there's like an in-universe explanation for it. You know what I mean? Like this is real fire, theoretically, that he's throwing. It's like affecting the environment. Whereas this is like the artwork of the bottle. So I'm just going to make it orange I'm going to make it orange just for clarity, you know? What part of the rendering process do you find easy? And what part do you find difficult? I think the easy part of rendering is the texture and the effects and stuff. Like that's the part where you can try stuff. If it's not working, you can just delete the layers. Because a lot of the rendering, the latter half of rendering is like texture and, you know, color tweaks. That all happens on like layers, extra layers you've added on top. So you can try and fail and take risks, and if something doesn't work, you can just delete those layers. The part that I hate, that I find difficult, is the flatting. before you get to that fun rendering. You just have to sit there and paint in the shapes, you know what I mean? It's just so mind-numbing. But once you get past that, it's really fun to do the more elaborate rendering. And you can do all that elaborate rendering on layers above your flats. And so you can take risks. There's no, like, you don't have to commit. You can try stuff and see what works. I don't know, man. This is looking pretty good. I like this a lot. I think... I know. But see, that's the secret. The Chili Man is supposed to look silly because that's what makes him so scary. It's like how in horror movies, like, kids are always really scary. Like, little kids being weird is scarier because kids are not supposed to be scary. I think that's the secret here. It's like clowns are scary, you know? He's kind of a clown character. It's a pretty wild page, man. It works really well, though. It's like, it's very distinct. Like when that bottle, I wasn't sure how it was going to work when the bottle turns color, but it really works, man. It really pops off the page. And I think it's helpful that there's, up in the top left here, there's another color element so that it doesn't feel so different, that there's something else in this universe that's kind of like adding a little bit of color to balance the page overall. Yeah, that's a great reference. I think that was a subconscious reference. LPTV is, our Chili Man is kind of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. I didn't even think about that. I actually really like the original Ghostbusters, but I think that like invaded our brains while we were like making this comic without realizing it. It's the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man theory of like, it's a little off, and it almost makes it scarier, you know? Cool. Well, that's the page, man. We just finished issue 3, page 10. So to recap why I think this page works is it's very clever about overall composition, right? So every panel on this page has its own compositional rules. So if I were to just look at panel 1, it's a symmetrical panel with a very symmetrical composition, but the lighting is coming from the right side here. So it's giving it a little bit of character. Like it's casting all the shadows to the left so that it's kind of like, if you use a really symmetrical layout like this and you have flat lighting, it's kind of boring. But it's a symmetrical composition with one-sided lighting, so that already is more interesting. Then you've got this sort of like color element, which is like super distinct. That color element as a whole offsets the color in these two panels. However, if you look at just panel 2, it obeys some really smart, basic compositional rules, which is subject in the foreground, eye line directly at the object we're supposed to be noticing. The brightest thing in the frame is the subject we're supposed to be looking at. So these two elements are like, there's no doubt that these two elements in panel 2, her head and the hot sauce bottle, are the things we're supposed to look at. Then you've got this panel, which is all about lighting and color choices, just to make sure it feels like it's glowing. There's actually like quite a lot of like subtlety to this hot sauce panel that plays with your perception of lighting to create kind of like an optical illusion of a glow. Then this panel plays with gradients. So it's fading gradients. The burgundy's fading off, the bottle's fading back to grayscale, the smoke is fading back to grayscale. So there's like kind of a interesting color story going on here. This panel is all about emotional impact. So where on panel 2, she was the brightest thing in the frame, now it's the opposite. Now her figure is darker, but it allows the eyes to pop. So by pushing her figure darker, her eyes pop more. It gives you more that manic sense. And then I made a short about this final panel, but this panel is about using a high overhead angle to make her feel small in the frame. So in this moment, she's feeling scared and alone. So you use a high bird's eye view to make her small in the frame, so you get a sense of that isolation and loneliness. And then you fill up the panel with detail to create this kind of sense. It's almost like too much detail. It's like there's a lot of rendering of like individual things like a coffee table and chairs and every single little item in the kitchen. But that's to create a sense of like stress and confusion. It's a small figure surrounded by clutter. So it creates the sense that your mind is kind of like alone, scared, and also spiraling out of control. Like there's a lot of intrusive thoughts maybe. So each panel tells a story, and then overall there's some like compositional choices to balance the page out. So there you go. So that's it. I think I'm good. That's what I wanted to do today. Is I wanted to finish page 10. I wanted to show kind of like the beginnings of playing with black and white and color. And yeah, that was really fun. Thank you everybody for being here. At one point we peaked at like 40 people watching concurrently, which is like amazing. I really appreciate it. So yeah, I'm going to keep coloring this one, trying to make content when I can. If the content slows down, don't worry, it's only because I'm trying to finish this issue and then it'll ramp back up. And stay tuned because we're going to try to launch the Discord this week, hopefully tomorrow. And everybody join the Discord and you can all use it as a place to get more information, the kind of questions that you ask on live stream. Especially if you're trying to ask questions in the comments on videos and not getting answers from me. Hopefully the Discord can be a place where it's a little bit easier for me to respond, because the comments on our videos are just, there's a lot of them. It's hard to wade through them. So anyway, yeah, thanks everybody. I'll play you out with some more music that I made, and I'll see you in the next one. So let's see, what are we going to listen to? Let's listen to my Dungeon Synth project, which does not get copyright strikes because I made this music myself. So we'll do that. All right, cool. Thanks everybody. I'll see you in the next one. Have a great rest of your weekend. I'll see you all soon.